Welcome back to the show, everybody. I want you to think about this. 10 different NFL teams will have new head coaches heading into next season. That's nearly a third of the teams in the entire league. If you remember, the Giants and Titans made in-season changes this year. Mike Tomlin, of course, stepped down right after the Steelers were eliminated in the postseason. You add that to 7 other teams who have decided to move on. A few of those vacancies have already been filled. And I don't know if you've ever heard this, but the NFL, the acronym, some people say it stands for not for long. Here to break down all the NFL coaching changes are Emil Assaf, Brendan O'Donnell, Ethan Love, and Spencer Grant.
What do you guys think out of the 9 teams that have head coaching vacancies right now? Which one is the best opening and why? And also, were these 2 coaches in Harbaugh and Tomlin kind of deserving of getting moved on from? What do you guys think?
I think the Ravens are the most appealing position right now because you've got way too much talent on that team to consistently come up as short as he's come since Lamar Jackson has been there at an MVP level since his second year in the league in 2019. John Harbaugh absolutely deserved to go. We can point to the lack of playoff success. We can point to the 20 games that they've blown with more than a double with more than a 2-score lead in the second half of these games, and they just have not been able to get it done. The one constant that time, sometimes the run game wasn't working, sometimes the momentum flipped, whatever. The one constant has been John Harbaugh consistently playing like he's afraid to lose as opposed to trying to win. And with the amount of talent that you've got on that team, especially now with Derrick Henry toward the end of his prime, but he's kind of a freak of nature. He can still be a 1,000-yard rusher to complement the type of dual threat that Lamar is. While he's in his prime, he just turned 29, I believe. He's getting up there in age. I think the Ravens ownership decided it's now or never. Harbaugh deserves a boot. I think that is more than the most desirable place for a head coach that knows what he's doing right now, because you inherit so much talent on both sides of the ball. I know the defense underperformed this year, but there's still way too much talent on that side of the ball to not be able to complement everything that you have on offense. I think Baltimore's in an interesting position, and I hope their ownership can get it right.
All right.
I know Baltimore is definitely a hot spot. I want to go with the one that I feel like is underappreciated just because they don't have quarterback certainty and they don't have a first-round pick this year, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah. But I feel like the Atlanta Falcons have just been perennially underperforming each and every year when they have a pretty good roster everywhere but QB, because they've had to have moments where they're starting Marcus Mariota 5 years after his prime.
Right.
They just couldn't figure that part out. But I think a coach who came in, and if you had the opportunity to work with the GM and figure out which QB they wanted, you've got Bijan, you've got Pitts, you've got Drake London, you have the pieces to build a really good offense. And they were just second in sacks this past year on defense. You have a lot of
and that was their biggest weakness too.
Yeah. They got a lot of young stars on that defense that you can come in, and whether you're an offensive coach or defensive coach, there's people on both sides of the ball that you know are hungry and that you can work around to build a team that can get some wins. This team has proven in the past couple of years, I think they've had either 7 or 8 wins, 4 out of the last 5 years. They've just been mid. That's it. And it feels like they need somebody to get them over the hump, coaching-wise and quarterback-wise, but at least start with the coach right now. It feels like a good spot to get your head coaching career started if you're a new hungry guy. Or if they get an older guy there, if they get a Mike Tomlin or something, just build a culture. Just build a culture that's about winning. Mike Tomlin, if he can win with the Steelers, I believe he could win with the Falcons because he's already worked that quarterback carousel before.
Let me ask you a question, Brendan, really, really quick. A, have we given up on Michael Penix? Because I'm kind of on the fence about it. And B, how do you think Mike McDaniel would do hypothetically with that offensive roster and a defense that already looks like they're not nearly as soft as that Dolphins unit? I feel like he could maybe make Penix's life a little bit easier and scheme some of their weapons open, especially guys that are as dynamic as Bijan and London.
Yeah. So I think Penix, it looks like this year's not going to be a prime opportunity for him to come back. I don't think he's going to be ready at the start of the season. And that's, I think, 3 ACL tears now. So I do think you have to start looking for other options, and Penix can fight for his job in his 4th year after next year, or if he comes back next season, and nobody's playing well, he could have an opportunity to come in and start. But I do not believe he's the savior anymore. And Penix is not.
And he is already like 28.
And my
that's
dream, but there's
why,
one caveat. My dream is if Malik Willis was going to be given a chance anywhere, give him that
dude.
Atlanta offense to put up numbers. But the caveat is now you have 3 quarterbacks on your roster that could
Well, and
be
that's why
starting or you
Ethan's
have been
looking at
starting.
you crazy.
What are you going
Get
to do with
Kirko
Kirk
out of
Cousins,
there, man.
You just going to get rid of Kirk
Okay,
Cousins?
Get Kirko out of there.
That's why Ethan's looking at you crazy, because how can this be the best spot for a head coach if they have no first rounder? They're already paying a backup quarterback $50 million. With talent on the team, they've been mid, which I understand a coach can get them over the hump. But now you have those guys that were there likely leaving, with Kyle Pitts being a free agent. And, you know, the fact that your quarterback of the future has a torn ACL and you're even thinking about Malik Willis just shows how bad the situation could get in Atlanta, in my opinion.
But
So that's why Ethan's looking at you.
Hold on. Is this worse? Is this worse than what the Denver Broncos had when they had Russell Wilson and they brought in Sean Payton and they were in cap hell, no first round picks for the future, and now they are the #1 seed 2 or 3 years later? I do believe a coach can do that.
Atlanta doesn't have that.
Atlanta was just second in the league in sacks. Like they're not an amazing defense, but they have the puzzle pieces where imagine if D'Amico Ryans was on this Atlanta team, I believe they would be a top 5 defense in the league. You just need a defensive culture setter there. And they have the offensive pieces or the defensive coordinator or the head coach, whichever side of the ball they're on, it doesn't really matter. It can be an offensive head coach or a defensive head coach, and you've got people to work with.
They're in cap hell. They have no picks. They have 2 quarterbacks that nobody knows what they're doing there. Penix is probably I think he's cooked because of his injuries. I genuinely think he's cooked. I don't know if he's going to come back and play, but when he's played, he hasn't been great. I mean, he's got a good arm. He had that at Washington, but how much is he going to be able to really move now? You're going to need a really good offensive line. Oh, I don't know.
It's no 1-year turnover, but in 2 years, can you not get out of all of these issues? I think you can, and you can build contracts around quality players as you start to get your draft picks back and you start to cut off Kirk Cousins and the losses of Penix. You can turn this around in 2 to 3 years. It would be like the perfect opportunity for a coach who knows he has some leadway. This isn't the winning season now, but in 2 to 3 years, we're building on something great. Drake London and Kyle Pitts are going to be vets by that point, and you're going to be able to draft some young stars. But like I was saying, the toughest part is being able to work with the GM and find a quarterback that fits your system and what you want to do. That part I get is the least appealing for sure.
The pushback I'll give you on the comparison to the Denver situation is whenever Sean Payton went there, Russell Wilson was expected to still be a superstar quarterback, and it ended up not being that way. It ended up being the same situation as you mentioned, kind of with a big contract and a quarterback that you have to kick out. With this Atlanta team, we already know Kirk Cousins is no longer what he once was, and I don't think he ever was a superstar, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. Does that make it the most appealing spot? I don't believe so, but I'll give you the fact that it's not impossible to turn it around. There is star players there, and you are in the worst division in the NFL. So I'll give you that. Now, I think the best position, and you guys – you'll understand, but there is a lot of work to be done. To me, it's the Raiders, right? It's the combination of, hear me out, it's the combination of you have the #1 overall pick and a guy we're about to talk about in Fernando Mendoza. That's going to be your quarterback of the future. 2, you already have maybe one of the biggest superstars on the defensive side of the ball and Max Crosby. And 3, you have $100 million in cap space while having Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty on rookie deals. You go into that place and you work with Tom Brady and you work with the ownership and the GMs to actually put an offensive line together. And I'll even get crazy. You work to bring in a star like A.J. Brown that wants to be out of Philadelphia, that Philly might be willing to take some of the heat and some of the contract to get him out of there because their culture is kind of messed up. And you could be looking at a built super team really quickly. Now, Ethan, you've been outraged by absolutely everything we've said. Who's yours? Just go ahead and tell us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I can see how you can turn around the Falcons, but to say they're the best job. But I'm just glad that all 4 of us have different answers. I really thought
Okay.
Emil was going to take mine when he was talking about, oh, it's going to take a lot to rebuild all this and that. Whatever.
Yeah.
I got the Tennessee Titans. That is the job that I would want. If I was a head
Okay.
coach searching for a job right now, the biggest question there is answered. I think Cam Ward is legit. He showed that
Yep.
this year he can make throws, he can extend plays, he's smart with the football. There's just nothing around him. Shamir
Yep.
DK is their best wide receiver. And hey, I
Yep.
like Alec
Sneaky
Ionaner as
star.
well.
I love DK this year. Sneaky star. I think he can be a quality part of a really good offense. That's all I'll say. But
yes, but they have the most. I believe that they have the most cap space in the NFL. Which, granted, you should not be building your team through free agency. You should build your team
That's
through
true.
the draft. Free agency should supplement to fill in holes here and there. But
Okay.
if you're coming there as a coach, you have the quarterback answered. You have the books cleared. You have the high draft picks. It is a blank canvas to do whatever you want. And the greatest part about the job that nobody has talked about with any of these jobs is that the expectations are in the gutter. If you're going to the Steelers, you're going to be expected to at least have a winning record and make the playoffs. If you're going to the Ravens, you're expected to win a Super Bowl pretty quickly because you have Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
The Titans
That's true.
have been subjected to absolute poop for the recent future. The expectations are in the gutter. You have the quarterback answered on a rookie contract, by the way, which is a big deal when it comes to building a team. If you can get the draft picks right, and if you can get the right coordinators, I would love if I was taking my pick of the litter on the jobs, I would definitely. And plus, Nashville, come on.
Tough division.
Okay.
Tough division.
Yeah, that's the thing. Very tough division with the Jags
division.
and the Texans being there. I mean, come on. We're talking about the Jags just barely lost the Bills. The Texans are moving on, and you have them in the Super Bowl. That's tough to go against. I do see the Raiders and the Titans pretty similar, though. The difference for me, though, is if I'm taking Ward by himself or the combination of Genty, Bowers, and now Mendoza, I'm going with the Raiders. But that will have to play out by itself.
All right, well done. That was Emil Assaf, Brendan O'Donnell, Ethan Love, and Spencer Grant. You can catch their entire podcast. It's called Analytixx Sports on our website at sportscaster.com. All right, stay with us. When we come back, we're talking about 100 points scored in a single high school basketball game, not by a team, but by a single individual. It happened. That's next on Open Mic. Stay with us.